This is the first video of the Global Footprints. In this channel, we will be discussing the AP World History course, and we'll be breaking down the course into all the different units. We'll be covering each unit, giving you guys concise and detailed information, in addition to fun facts and summaries of the unit. So this video will be an introduction to the AP World History course, and in this video we'll be breaking down the course into different time periods, different main events, and we'll be discussing the main events in each time period. So let's begin. So our first time period was technological and environmental transformations, which was from time of origin to 600 BCE. Our second time period was organization and reorganization of human societies, which was from 600 BCE to 600 CE. Our third time period was which is regional and interregional interactions. It was from 600 CE to 1450 Common Era. Our fourth time period is global interactions, which is from Common Era 1450 to 1750. Our fifth time period is industrialization and global integration, which is from 1750 to 1900. And finally, our last time period is accelerating and global change and realignments, which is from 1900 to present day. So, in our first time period, which is time of origin to 600 BCE, the main events were domestication of animals, development of farming in Mesopotamia, Bronze Age, rise of Sumerians, unification of Egypt, rise of Indus River Valley. Judaism begins with Abraham, Shang Kingdom in China, Zhou Dynasty, and rise of Hinduism. The main events of 600 BCE to 600 CE were founding of Roman Republic, Buddha, Confucius, Socrates, Golden Age of Athens, Alexander the Great, Mauryan Dynasty, founding of Qin Dynasty, founding of Han Dynasty, rise of Roman Empire, spread of Christianity, end of Pax Romana, end of Han Dynasty, spread of Buddhism in China, Rome legalizing Christianity, Gupta Dynasty, fall of Western Roman Empire, and the reign of Justinian. From Common Era 600 to 1450, the main events were rise of Islam, Tang Dynasty in China, Umayyad Caliphate, start of Abbasid Caliphate, Charlemagne crowned Holy Roman Empire, Heian period in Japan, beginning of Kievan Rus, Song Dynasty in China, split of Christian Church, First Christian Crusade, rise of feudalism in Japan, rise of Kingdom of Mali, reign of Genghis Khan, founding of the Yuan Dynasty, founding of the Ottoman Empire, Italian Renaissance, spread of bubonic plague, rise of Aztec Empire, rise of Inca Empire, beginning of the Ming Dynasty, Swahili starts to flourish, Zheng He voyages, and start of Atlantic slave trade. From 1450 to 1750, the main events were that the Ottomans conquered Constantinople, Columbus begins his expeditions, Vasco da Gama reaches India, commercial revolution in Europe, start of Protestant Reformation, Cortez conquers the Aztecs, founding of the Mughal Empire, Pizarro conquers the Inca, beginning of the Russian Empire, founding of the Manila, which is World Trade System, scientific revolution, founding of the Tokugawa Shogunate, first British colony North America, beginning of Japanese isolation, Louis XIV, absolute monarch of France, founding of the Qing Empire, Dutch Boers colonized South Africa, and Peter the Great westernizes Russia. From 1750 to 1900, the main events were the Enlightenment, 7 Years' War, British East India Company controls India, beginning of the Industrial Revolution, American Revolution, French Revolution and Napoleon, feminism and Mary Wollstonecraft, Haitian Revolution, Muhammad Ali rules Egypt, Latin American Wars of Independence, Monroe Doctrine, British abolish slavery, Opium Wars, Tanzimat reforms in Ottoman Empire, Communist Manifesto and the beginnings of Marxism, the British Raj in India, emancipation of serfs in Russia, Meiji Restoration, Japanese industrialize, unification of Germany, height of European imperialism, demographic transition in the West, Russian industrialization, the Berlin Conference, founding of Indian National Congress, abolition of slavery in Brazil and Cuba, and European spheres of influence in China. And finally, from 1950 or 1900 to present, the main events were Mexican Revolution, Chinese Revolution, World War I and Versailles Conference, Russian Revolution, start of Great Depression, Gandhi's resistance in India, Hitler rises to power in Germany, Japan invades China, World War II begins, creation of United Nations, India and Pakistan gain independence, the Cold War happens, creation of Israel, communist revolution in China, Bandung Conference non-alignment, creation of EEC, Cuban Revolution, Year of Africa, Iranian Revolution, end of apartheid in South Africa, and the fall of the Soviet Union. So these were all the main events for each time period, and in future videos we'll be taking a look at each time period separately, and we'll also be looking at the main events in each time period. But for right now, we'll be taking a look at each key concept for each time period. So let's begin. So our first key concept, and remember, these key concepts are all for different time periods. This key concept, these key concepts that we're looking at right now, they're for the first time period, and the next key concepts will be for the second time period, and so on and so forth. So the first key concept is the term big geography draws attention to the global nature of world history. Throughout the Paleolithic period, humans migrated from Africa to Eurasia, Australia, and the Americas. Early humans were mobile and creative in adapting to different geographical settings, from savanna to desert to tundra. Humans also developed varied and sophisticated technologies. And key concept number 2 is in response to warming climates at the end of the last ice age, about 10,000 years ago, some groups adapted to the environment in new ways, while others remained hunter-foragers. Settled agriculture appeared in several different parts of the world. The switch to agriculture created a more reliable, but not necessarily more diversified food supply. Farmers also affected the environment through cultivation of selected plants to the exclusion of others, to the construction of irrigation systems, and the use of domesticated animals for food and labor. Populations increased, village life developed, followed by urban life with all its complexity. Patriarchy and forced labor systems developed, giving elite men concentrated power. Pastoralism emerged in parts of Africa and Eurasia. Like agriculturalists, pastoralists tended to be more socially stratified than hunter-foragers. Pastoralists' mobility facilitated technology transfers through their interaction with settled populations. Concept number 3. About 5,000 years ago, urban societies developed, laying the foundations for the first civilizations. The term civilization is normally used to designate large societies with cities and powerful states. While there were many differences between civilizations, they also shared important features. They also produced agricultural surpluses that permitted significant specialization of labor. All civilizations contained cities and generated complex institutions, including political bureaucracies, armies, and religious hierarchies. They also featured clearly stratified social hierarchies and organized long-distance trading relationships. Economic exchanges intensified within and began in between civilizations, as well as with nomadic pastoralists. As population grew, competition for surplus resources, especially food, led to greater social stratification, specialization of labor, increased trade, more complex systems of government and religion, and the development of record keeping. As civilizations expanded, people had to balance their need for more resources with environmental constraints. Finally, the accumulation of wealth in settled communities spurred warfare between communities and or with pastoralists. This violence drove the development of new technologies of war and urban defense. For our second timeline, we have more key concepts. The first key concept for this timeline is as states and empires increased in size and contacts between regions multiplied, people transformed their religious and cultural systems. Religions and belief systems provided a social bond and an ethical code to live by. These shared beliefs also influenced and reinforced political, economic, and occupational stratification. Religious and political authority often merged as rulers, some of whom were considered divine, and used religion along with military and legal structures to justify their rule and ensure its continuation. Religions and belief systems also generated conflict, partly because beliefs and practices varied greatly within and among societies. For concept 2, as the early states and empires grew in number, size, and population, they frequently competed for resources and came into conflict with one another. In quest of land, wealth, security, some empires expanded dramatically. In doing so, they built powerful military machines and administrative institutions that were capable of organizing human activities over long distances, and they created new groups of military and political elites to manage their affairs. As these empires expanded their boundaries, they also faced the need to develop policies and procedures to govern their relationships with ethically and culturally diverse populations, sometimes to integrate them within imperial society and sometimes to exclude them. In some cases, the success of these empires created further problems. By expanding their boundaries too far, they created political, cultural, and administrative difficulties that they could not manage. They also experienced environmental, social, and economic problems when they overutilized their lands and subjects, and when disproportionate wealth became concentrated in the hands of privileged classes. Concept number 3, with the organization of large-scale empires, the volume of long-distance trade increased dramatically. Much of this trade resulted from the demand for raw materials and luxury goods. Land and water route linked many regions of the Eastern Hemisphere. The exchange of people, technology, religions, and cultural beliefs, food crops, domesticated animals, and disease pathogens developed alongside the trade in goods across extensive networks of communication and exchange. In the Americas and Oceania, localized networks developed, and that was between the natives. For our third timeline, we have three more key concepts. The first one is, although Afro-Eurasia and the Americas remain separate from one another, this area witnessed a deepening and widening of networks of human interaction within and across regions. The results were unprecedented concentrations of wealth and the intensification of cross-cultural exchanges. Innovations in transportation, state policies, and mercantile practices contributed to the expansion and development of commercial networks, which in turn served as conduits for cultural, technological, and biological diffusion within and between various societies. Pastoral or nomadic groups played a key role in creating and sustaining these networks. Expanding networks fostered great interregional exchanges while at the same time sustaining regional diversity. Islam, a new monotheistic religion, spread quickly through the practices of trade, warfare, and the diffusion that was characteristic of this period. Key concept number 2. State formation in this area demonstrated remarkable continuity, innovation, and diversity in various regions. In Afro-Eurasia, some states attempted, with differing degrees of success, to preserve or revive imperial structures, while smaller, less centralized states continued to develop. The expansion of Islam introduced a new concept, the caliphate, to Afro-Eurasian statecraft. Pastoral people in Eurasia built powerful and distinctive empires that integrated people and institutions from both the pastoral and agrarian worlds. And the Americas, powerful states developed in both Mesoamerica and the Andean region. For key concept number 3, changes in trade networks resulted from and stimulated increasing productive capacity, with important implications for social and gender structures and environmental processes. Productivity rose in both agriculture and industry. Rising productivity supported population growth and urbanization, but also strained environmental resources and at times caused dramatic demographic swings. Shifts in production and the increased volume of trade also stimulated new labor practices, including adaptation of existing patterns of free and coarser labor. Social and gender structures evolved in response to these changes. For our fourth timeline, there's three more key concepts, and the first key concept is the interconnection of the eastern and western hemispheres were made possible by transoceanic voyaging, marked a key transformation of this world. Technological innovations helped make transoceanic connections possible. Changing patterns of long distance trade included the global circulation of some commodities and the formation of new regional markets and financial centers. Increased interregional and global networks facilitated the spread of religion and other elements of culture, as well as the migration of large numbers of people. Germs carried to the Americas ravaged the indigenous peoples, while the global exchange of crops and animals altered agriculture, diets, and populations across the planet. Key concept number two. Although this world's productive systems continued to be heavily centered on agricultural production throughout this period, major changes occurred in agricultural labor, the systems and locations of manufacturing, gender and social structures, environmental processes. According to the Little Ice Age, farmers increased agricultural productivity by introducing new crops and using new methods in crop and field rotation. Economic growth also depended on new forms of manufacturing and new commercial patterns, especially long distance trade. Political and economic centers within regions shift, and merchants' social status tended to rise in various states. Demographic demographic growth, even in areas such as the Americas, where disease had ravaged the population, was restored by the 18th century and surged in many areas, especially with the introduction of American food crops throughout the Eastern Hemisphere. The Columbian Exchange led to new ways of humans interacting with their environments. New forms of coarse and semi coarse labor emerged in Europe, Africa, and the Americas, and affected ethnic and racial classifications and gender roles. Finally, the third key concept is empires expanded and conquered peoples around the world, but they often had difficulties incorporating culturally, ethnically, and religiously diverse subjects and administering widely dispersed territories. Agents of the European powers moved into existing trade networks around the world. In Africa and the greater Indian Ocean, nascent European empires consisted mainly of interconnected trading posts and enclaves. In the Americas, European empires moved more quickly to settlement and territorial control, responding to local demographic and commercial conditions. Moreover, the creation of European empires in the Americas quickly fostered a new Atlantic exchange network that included the transatlantic slave trade and trans-Pacific exchange network. Around the world, empires and states of varying sizes pursued strategies of centralization, including more efficient taxation system that placed strains on peasant producers, sometimes prompting local rebellions. Rulers used public displays of art and architecture to legitimize state power. African states shared certain characteristics with larger Eurasian empires. Changes in African and global trading patterns strengthened some West and Central African states, especially on the coast. This led to the rise of new states and contributed to the decline of states on both the coast and the interior. For time period 5, there's four key concepts. The first key concept is industrialization fundamentally altered the production of goods around the world. It not only changed how goods were produced and consumed and what was considered a good, it also had far-reaching effects on the global economy, social relations, and culture. Although it is common to speak of the Industrial Revolution, the process of industrialization was a gradual one that unfolded over the course of the 18th and 19th centuries, eventually becoming global. For concept 2, as states industrialized during this period, they also expanded their existing overseas colonies and established new types of colonies and transoceanic empires. Regional warfare and diplomacy both resulted in and were affected by this process of modern empire building. This process was led mostly by Europe, although not all states were affected equally, which led to an increase of European influence around the world. The United States and Japan also participated in this process. The growth of new empires challenged the power of existing land based empires of Eurasia. New ideas about nationalism, race, gender, class, and culture also developed that facilitated the spread of transoceanic empires and, in some cases, justified anti imperial resistance and the formation of new national identities. For key concept number 3, the 18th century marked the beginning of an intense period of revolution and rebellion against existing governments and the establishment of new nation states around the world. Enlightenment thought and the resistance of colonized peoples to imperialized centers shaped this revolutionary activity. These rebellions sometimes resulted in the formation of new states and stimulated the development of new ideologies, including an increasing insistence on self rule and pursuit of democracy in a number of instances. These new ideas, in turn, led to the revolutionary and anti imperial movements of this period. For key concept 4, migration patterns changed dramatically throughout this period, and the number of migrants increased significantly. These changes were closely connected to the development of transoceanic empires in a global capitalist economy. In some cases, people benefited economically from migration, while other people were seen simply as commodities to be transported. Migration produced dramatically different sending and receiving societies, and it presented challenges to governments in fostering national identities and regulating the flow of people. And for our last timeline, there's three key concepts. The first key concept is rapid advances in science altered the understanding of the universe and the natural world and led to the development of new technologies. These changes enabled unprecedented population growth, which altered how humans interacted with the environment and disrupted ecological balances at local, regional, and global levels. Key concept number 2 was at the beginning of the 20th century, a European dominated global political order existed, which also included the US, Russia, and Japan. Over the course of the century, people and states around the world challenged this order in ways that sought to redistribute power within the existing order and to restructure empires, while those people and states in power attempted to maintain the status quo. Other people and states sought to overturn the political order itself. These challenges to, and the attempts to maintain the political order manifested themselves in an unprecedented level of conflict with high human casualties. In the context of these conflicts, many regimes in both older and newer states struggled with maintaining political stability and were challenged by internal and external factors, including ethnic and religious conflicts, secessionist movements, territorial partitions, economic dependency, and the legacies of colonialism. Finally, our third key concept is the 20th century witnessed a great deal of warfare and the collapse of global economy in the 1930s. In response to these challenges, the role of the state in domestic empires fluctuated, and new institutions of global governance emerged and continued to develop throughout the century. Scientific breakthroughs, new technologies, increasing levels of adaptation and integration, changing relationships between human and the environment, and the frequency of political conflict all contributed to global developments in which people created new understandings of society, culture, and historical interpretations. Institutions of global governance now shaped and adapted in these social conditions. So, this was just a summary of the AP World History course, and the timelines, the units, and the key concepts. And from this video alone, you can see that it's an information-heavy course, but we'll do our best in giving you guys all the info, all the summaries, and all the facts, so that you guys can be prepared for the AP exam, and so you guys can ace the course. And remember, if you like our videos, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Have a nice day.